Hi, everyone in the ladies' lounge, ladies and gents. Hi, Miss Viv.
Hello, Miss Tiffany, and good afternoon to everybody. How are we today?
How are we? Yeah, we were just having a little chat as we usually do, and we're looking at today resistor or persister, and which one are you?
So, are you a sister of resistor or persister?
And it's funny because when I was writing it, I was going to say resist her or persist her. So you're on the same train as me with this lady thing, but I didn't want to confuse people. So that's the last thing we need is more confusion.
Tiffany and I have just done 5 days of the Maestro class with Dr. Dane here, who's one of the co-founders of Access Consciousness, and it was a 1:30 a.m. because it was coming live from Houston. It was a 1:30 a.m. start for us Australians till about 9:30, 10 a.m. So we're kind of like
Yeah, and just on that actually, because it was a 2:30 start for us in New South Wales, and you know, the symphony sessions that we do in those classes, Symphony of Possibilities. There's a certain level of energy required with those sessions, and waking up at 2:30, and some mornings of class it was just like straight in there doing a session, and I was like, oh wow, you really have to step up and relax into that kind of expansion of your capacities and the possibilities. So it was really fun. And
yeah, it's like for the listeners and the watchers, how many of you access that space where everything has this beautiful fluidity to it? There's this flow, there's this gentleness, but there's this incredible presence with it. You could be, I don't know, walking down by the lake. You could be out in nature somewhere. You could be just reading a book, but there is this energy that's available where whatever the pressures of the day or, the intensity of what you're thinking about is just not there. It's just, you're not being something that isn't actually you. So, this resistor or persister, what came up for me, which is why I said to Tiff, hey, look, this is what's going on for me at the moment. And we love talking about things that are up in our world because that's life, right? That's how things show up. When you choose to become more aware, when you choose to become more conscious, you can have more magic available to you. And so what came up for me during the 5 days of the class was how much I'm still using this incredible energy of what I describe as force. It's like I'm almost pushing too much. So rather than just, so for instance, making the request of something that I'd like to have show up in my world, requesting of the universe, hey, universe, what will it take for this to show up? But instead of just making that light request, like a child asks, they've got this beautiful, gentle, vulnerable, Mummy, can I please have, it's an energy that's irresistible. But what I've done is I've made the request and then I've realized, oh my God, sometimes it shows up really quickly and effortlessly, like a feather touch. And other times I'm still like, why hasn't it shown up yet? And why is it taking so long? And I'm frustrated. Well, then I must try harder. Because that's been my mentality. If something hasn't worked, try harder. You put more energy into it. You push more. You take more action. And yet that's like your throttle, the pedal is down full, fully down in the car, and there's nothing more to draw on. And for me, the biggest thing was, where is the receiving in this? Where is that gentle space of being willing to ask and receive? Because if I'm pushing and if I'm using so much energy to try and force something to come to fruition, where is the space for that, for the universe to actually deliver that gently and kindly and in the most amazing timing for me just to receive?
Yeah. And I mean, like every topic that we choose to talk about with our Facebook lives, there's always so many things that we could say, and we could probably have 70 Facebook lives all about the one topic. But, we've all heard of this idea of resistance or persistence, right? And, it's like, what were you aware of, Viv, when you were looking at the resistance side of this?
Well, the thing that stood out to me like kangaroo balls was how much energy I'm using that I actually don't have to use, because, you know, for anybody that knows me, I have quite a dynamic energy. I'm always up. I've always got plenty of energy. Energy is not an issue for me, but it's like I've almost been misapplying how to use and how to be with that incredible amount of potency, because there's been so many times in my life where I've been this potency and things have shown up magically, miraculously, without any effort. There's an effortlessness, there's an ease, there's an ooze with that. And then there are other times when I start to take a point of view, when I start to try and control things, I start to get a bit fiery and a bit feisty and a bit, you know, pushing too hard. So the part of the persistences for me was, I can still request, but I can let it go, because it's my mind that goes, you know, into the story or into the significance or the creation, and I add more fuel and solidity to something that is literally, it just needs to be as light as a feather touch. So I was resisting the ease. I was using, the biggest thing was, I'm using way too much energy here. And what would it be like if I just relaxed, if I just relaxed into this, if I know that if the thing that I'm asking for is actually going to create more for my life and my living and my reality, it's going to show up. It's a done deal. It can't not show up. I just have to relax and be the space that is willing to receive, which is, for me, it's such a head fuck in one way, because it's like, no, I want something, I've been taught to go out and get it, and you do whatever it takes. But this ability to persist with receiving, to persist with the ease, to persist with knowing that it's coming, that is a real art form for me. And that's what I've become aware of this week, just the relaxing into the receiving.
And it's, I love that, because, you know, like with everything, if nothing was right and nothing was wrong, then what's possible here? And, you know, that you know, the word persistence for me as well is that has been that energy of, well, I have to get up and I have to keep doing things, basically, and then judging myself for not doing the things that I've decided or been taught that I have to do to get what I want or to create what I'd like to create in the world. But if you look at persistence from a very different space of, you know, if we look at it kind of energetically, which, you know, I love talking about the energetics of things and creation and stuff. And it's like, if we look at it a little differently, and let's look at, for example, okay, so you'd like to create something, whether it's in your life or in your business, or you'd like to have something in your life that you don't yet have. First of all, it's the willingness to become aware of that. Like, be willing to firstly know that you can actually create or have anything. And then secondly, to go, okay, so if I could create or have anything, what would I truly like to have? And then knowing that the request of yourself and the universe to have that, like you said, Viv, it's done, but it's like, don't then disconnect from it. You know, it's like, persist in the willingness to stay connected to that creation, because once you've asked the question, it's created. But then you continually choosing to be with that request and that creation and that desire for something else in your world, it's like your energy contributing to that will allow it to show up. But like you say, it's like you can't control, ask and you shall receive. You can't control when or how that shows up, you know. And a lot of people talk about, you know, manifestation, for example. You hear that a lot out there. It's like, I'm going to manifest a new car, or I'm going to manifest a new man in my life. It's like, well, manifest actually means how it shows up. So when you're saying, I'm going to manifest a new man in my life, you're saying, I'm going to, how it shows up, a new man in my life, which actually is not congruent with what is going on. So the manifestation is the how and when it shows up, basically, and you don't get to control that. We don't get to control that. And oftentimes, if you're willing to let go of the control of that, and like Viv says, relax into the receiving and the knowing that creation is way easier than we've been taught it is, then oftentimes it will show up greater and with more magic and more wondrousness than you could have actually tried to create it as being.
Yeah, and just to pick up on something you started with, Tiff, it's like, so for the listeners, the watchers, it's like, so the question could be, okay, what can I be more? Not do, because I think we're so brilliant at doing, like, hands up, who's really good at doing, you know? We're brilliant at doing, but again, like I said, when we do, where is the space to receive, or be that receives? So if you're asking for something to show up, what can you be that will allow this to show up? And another way to look at it is, okay, so what can I be that will allow this to actualize? So actualize is the word that actually, it comes into fruition, it comes into your physical reality rather than to manifest. You know, and I think we've had people watching, it's like we've had plenty of times where we've manifested stuff and it's shown up, but the actual energetic congruency is that it actualizes. So what can you do that will actualize what it is that you're currently asking for with ridiculous amounts of ease?
Yeah, and joy and glory, which is exuberance and abundance, basically. So, you know, I mean, it's also that thing of, you know, again, the energetics of this stuff is like, you've also got to be aware of what's going on underneath this stuff for you too. Like, for example, if you ask for something to show up in your world, but underneath it, secretly, you're like, I don't think this is possible. Well, it's not going to create that much ease for it to show up. So you've also got to be willing to be aware of the energy, like you say, Viv, the energy that you're being with that question too. It's like, what am I creating that is not allowing this to show up? You know?
Yeah, and what am I being that's not allowing it to show up? Because that congruency, you think about, so what popped in my mind when you started talking, Tiff, was imagine you've planted a palm seed and you put the palm seed in, and then within a period of time, with a bit of water and some sunshine and whatever, a tiny little, you know, seed starts to germinate and the seedling starts to grow. So there's an incredible amount of energy that seed needs to kind of pop through, you know, the germination process. There's an incredible amount of energy, but there's no force, but there is a persistence. There's this tenacity of consciousness that this seed goes, I know I'm going to grow. I know I'm going to grow. I'm going to break through. And then the ease that if the environment is nice, it's decent soil, there's a bit of rainfall, there's some sunshine, that naturally, without any kind of other, you know, forced manipulation, that seedling grows into a sapling, which then grows into a tree. And this is the tenacity of consciousness where there's no force, there's no effort, but there is this energy of being congruent with, okay, here's what I'm asking for. So if I just turn that on to us, if what you're asking for is congruent, and you'll sense that if you're asking for something that you're attached to or that you're making significant or you've decided is going to be a certain way, there is not a congruency there. That idea, that seed, that germination cannot pop out into the universe because there's too much. It's like you've got too much soil and it's buried way down, and the more significance, the more force, the further you push it away. So you're energetically congruent with your ask. You'll sense it. You'll know that when you ask for something, everything is like the green lights. Everything's green lights all the way. But it requires that level of presence, like you were saying, Tiff. When you ask for something, you'll sense whether it creates space and peace and an expansion in your world, like a feather touch, or whether there's an element of force or push, or your mind gets involved. And that was the pivotal point for me this week. I'm like, just what you were saying, oh, this isn't coming to fruition because I'm pushing so hard. So now what I've done is, right, okay, imagine a magnet, and now I'm pulling what it is that I've asked to show up. I'm pulling it towards me rather than constantly being, because I was repelling with that level of persistence. The energy I was being was actually repel, thinking that that's what I needed to do. But now it's the relax and receive and being energetically congruent with my ask, and now pulling it towards me, where it becomes this, it's like this dance that you have, the symphony, like you mentioned, Tiff.
Yeah, symphony of possibilities. And, you know, it's also that thing where once, you know, I mean, the amount of times that I've had so many brilliant ideas, and I actually remember, like, many years ago, Gary Douglas in a choice of possibilities class, asked me, how many brilliant ideas do you have on a daily basis? And I was like, you know what? I don't think I have good ideas. And when he you see an energy in the response, but he didn't really say anything. And then 2 days later, I started to realize I have so many brilliant ideas so much of the time. But what I would do with those is in learning what creation is here, or being taught how to create things, which is basically like do, I would think of this brilliant idea, and then I'd try and figure out how to do it. And then either I'd not be very good at figuring it out, or I'd try to do all these things and it wouldn't show up. And then I would just judge myself, and then I'd push it out of my world because I'd decide, well, that didn't happen, or I can't create, or I'm not good enough, or all of these things that continually push away these creations. Whereas once you have that, like even with our idea of the ladies' lounge, and we had a podcast recently on Sarah Watt's podcast show, which is what's it called?
What is the ladies' lounge?
No, what's Sarah Watt's podcast called?
On the road. Consciousness on the road? Road trip
road trip to consciousness or something. Anyway, we've got a link in our Facebook, in our ladies' lounge group for you guys to listen to. But it was really that this coming together of these sparks of possibilities and ideas. And then Viv and I talked about it, and it was like spark, spark, spark. And we also include the sparks as an entity, as a thing in itself. It's like once you've created something, it's like you can then also receive from that creation, because it has a life force of its own. It's not all about you and what you do to control this thing to come into existence. It's recognizing that, just that whole thing of creating in a very different way. I remember when, this idea of you can create your own reality. And I heard that when I was quite young, and I knew it was true, but I had no idea how to access that until I came across Access Consciousness and these tools. Where starting to learn that our way of being with creation and ease with creation and receiving from our creations and gifting our creations to the world is such a different reality than how we've been taught to create.
Totally. So if anybody out there is trying to force something into reality, maybe ask some questions. It's like, okay, what if this was way easier than I'm making it? And talk to the thing that you're looking to create. Hey, can you show me what's required to bring you to fruition? Because everything has a life force.
Ask it. What's that?
Awesome conversation.
Yeah, and you can also ask it, like, is there anything that anyone or anything that we can add? Like, what do you require? What can I be for you today? And, it's just that simple thing of, with a creation, every day you can wake up and go, okay, creation, whatever it's called, what do you require of me today? And then continue on with your day, not ignoring it, but not going, okay, I have to like focus and sit down and do things. It's just like be present with that, but also go on with your day. And that's when all of the possibilities start to show up, and what's ready to be created and come to fruition, you will become more aware of in a very different way.
And the question for today's StreamYard is, what can I be that will allow this to actualize with ridiculous amounts of ease?
What can I be that would allow this to actualize? I'm just popping it into the comments now.
With ridiculous amounts of ease.
Ridiculous amounts of ease.
That's assuming that you would like to have more ease in your life, because you may or may not.
Maybe you want things to be difficult and hard. As Gary Douglas said, there's only one thing you want hard in life.
And we'll leave it there.
And on that note,
thanks, Tiffy.
Thanks, darling. Thanks everyone for being here.
Bye.
Ciao.